Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. We're so excited to be once again holding our annual year-end session for Sage 100. So we are going to dive in just a moment. I love seeing everyone letting me know where you're joining from today. It looks like we've got people across the country. I am your host today. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I am located in Loveland, Colorado. We just got our first snow of the season yesterday, very late, but I am very excited about the snow. So we are going to take you through everything you need to know for year-end in Sage 100, whether you've attended this session in past years or this is your first year with us. So we're going to dive into all the details you need in just a minute, but I have just a few housekeeping items to go over before then. So everyone has been placed on mute. Obviously, that's not because we don't want to hear from you. We're so excited to hear from you. So keep, the chat going throughout the session. This session is being recorded, so we're going to send you out the recording tomorrow afternoon so you can review it, as needed throughout year end and into next year. And then, we are going to have Q&A at the end. So Monica will come on in just a moment, and throughout the presentation, you can ask questions, but we're going to hold that Q&A to the end. So ask those questions at any time. You can drop them in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. There is a Q&A. You can put them there. Wherever you put them, I'll make sure to find them, and we'll get all those questions answered at the end. So we'll have a nice Q&A session to ask whatever might be on your mind. So you can ask it at any time, but we're just going to hold those questions till the end of the presentation. So I think that's everything. Keep the chat going. Love to see where you're all coming from. And then we are going to send that recording out tomorrow afternoon. So if you have to miss part of the session, no big deal. So I'm going to bring Monica on so we can get to the main event without further ado. Hey, Monica, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you, Courtney?
Doing great. I'm going to let you take it away.
Great. Thanks. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Monica Boyer. I'm a senior consultant here at SWK. I've been working with the Sage 100 product for about 25 years. It's an exciting time this time of year, right? Or busy time, some will say. So we're getting ready to get into the end of the year and doing our 1099s and W-2s. So we're going to talk about all of that today. Our agenda is right here on the left-hand side. I won't read through all of those for you, but just wanted to let you know that feel free to reach out to your Sage 100 consultant or your customer account manager if you need further information, obviously after the questions on this call and all of that. If you want to implement anything, maybe you haven't used 1099s from the system so far and you want to, you can reach out to us to get some help in that area. All right, so some key information. So Sage 100 is version specific, whether you can get the release downloads that are needed to do the W-2s and 1099s. So these are the minimum versions required to process that period end stuff. So the interim release download, which has not been released yet, it's usually released towards the end of December, is compatible with versions 2023, 2024, and 2025. So if you're on an earlier version than that, you won't be able to get that interim release download, and you'll need it. So you may need to talk to us about doing an upgrade. Sage 100 Payroll 2.25 is compatible with Sage 100 version 2021 or later. So if you're only doing W-2s, you need to be on 2021 or later. However, please note that Sage doesn't support 2021 any longer or 2022. At this point in time, they're only supporting 2023, 24, and 25. So accounts payable 1099s, you'll get your update from a different area there. So your updates come in from your payroll in your payroll updates, and I'm going to show you one a little later when we get in the system. But and your interim release download is usually released to apply to your system. But your accounts payable updates, so your form updates for 1099s, those are going to come from Atrix. So Atrix is the software that Sage uses to process the 1099s. So later when you see that we launch the 1099 processing, we're actually going into Atrix to do that. And Atrix is a company who does a lot of processing of these government forms. So you'll be prompted to install updated forms when you start entering the 1099 printing dialog. So once you choose your form, and you'll see that a little later, and you hit next, it's going to prompt you if there's an update available. It'll only prompt you if there's an update available. I did not save that for today because it takes 5 minutes or so, and I didn't want to waste that time while we're watching a little bar go across the screen. There is a community hub, and I'll show you some of this later as well. I have this link later in Courtney's going to put it in the chat as well. But Sage has a year-end hub that has all the information about, their recommendations as far as Sage 100 and how to process your year-end. There is some Sage 100 procedural videos that are available. And there's a link to that there, which I'm sure Courtney will put in the chat as well. And those have some kind of little short videos where you can see how to do certain things within Sage, because we're not going to go through like period end processing today and those kinds of things, but you can see some of that there, some videos of that there. So I know everybody's probably curious about President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. And of course, that was passed on July 4th, 2025. For payroll, it affects overtime and how those things are taxed. And right now, the federal withholding will remain the same through the end of 2025. So Sage is still working on a knowledge base article to explain this further. So hopefully we can get that out to you guys when we actually see it. But what I assume is going to happen is they're going to put into the tax tables to calculate that on overtime. So when you're using, an overtime earnings code, it will calculate the taxes appropriately. So it probably won't come out until maybe that IRD or close to that time. Just as a note on the bottom there, if you're using Sage Fixed Assets, there are things that affect that related to the One Big Beautiful Bill. So I did put something down there. Sage University, which is sageu.com, offers a master class related to fixed assets in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So if you use Sage Fixed Assets and you need to learn how that's going to affect your depreciation, you can take advantage of that at sageu.com. And you may have to create an account if you don't have one. So where to get your forms? Sage has a nice tax forms site, and you'll see it there, and I do have it listed at the end of the presentation as well. But it'll show you, exactly what your 1099s and 1096s and everything that you need for processing them. So I'm going to show you that real quick. So this is Sage's checks and forms site. So Sage checks and forms, and it's just checks.sage.com. And when you go in here, you can look for the forms that you need, tax forms and business forms, and you can say 1099s, 1096s, and then you can choose your software. So Sage 100 2016 and newer is what I chose, and then it comes up with all of the different things that are available as far as 1099s and 1096s. Of course, you do the same thing for your W-2s. Okay. Accounts payable data verification. So it's important, obviously, when you're going to process 1099s and W-2s to do some data verification. So in accounts payable, these are the things that I would recommend that you verify your data with. So you want to make sure your information in company maintenance is accurate. So both the W-2s and the 1099s pull data from company maintenance, such as the contact name, the federal ID number, a few other things that we'll look at when we go into Sage. So you want to make sure that that information is accurate. You can change it when you're running the 1099s or W-2s. However, it doesn't go back and write that back to Sage. So it's nice to just have it in Sage so that it pulls it in and there's less that you have to do when you run these forms. So you would check your 1099 year and AP options as well. So we want to make sure that that's the appropriate year. Mine is set to 2025, but I'll show it to you in a little while. And then we want to verify our vendor 1099 data. So we can look at the payment history report, and you can actually run that for just your 1099 vendors. And then you can look at all of that information. And if there's any discrepancies or any problems that you see, because that's exactly what the 1099s are going to be for, you can correct those issues. And you can correct those issues. I'll show you where when we go into Sage, but you can correct them in that 1099 history information as long as you have the security access to do so in Sage 100. For payroll data verification. So typically you're going to be verifying your payroll data throughout the year to make sure it's accurate. And obviously you're filing certain reports throughout the year anyways that the government's going to have. So you know that the government agencies are going to be verifying that information, the final information against the information they've got throughout the year. So you'll obviously be doing that throughout the year. But at year end, you can run your quarterly tax reports, or you can run your check history report for the entire year, or both, so that you can verify the information that's on the W-2s. And of course, you can have those documents in your hand when you run those W-2s so that you can check them as you go. This is Sage's payroll workflow. So this is what they recommend at year end for you to follow. You'll find this in that year end center, but you'll process payroll, you'll print your audit reports and checks, and then you update your check register. So this is your last payroll of the year. And then when you're done with all of that, you can print and reconcile your W-2 forms. Well, actually print your quarterly reports. Sorry, I skipped that whole row. Print your quarterly reports, reconcile them, all of that. And then you can print your 941s, your year-end reports, your W-2s and W-3s. You can make a backup of your company at that time if you like to keep a backup of the company as of the end of the year. It's not as important as it used to be because payroll runs differently now, so you can still get some of that information or some of those reports to run for prior years. But a lot of times users like to make a backup of that. And of course, if you don't know how to copy your company, you can always ask your Sage 100 consultant or customer account manager to help you or give you a call. Perform period end processing, and then you would run that payroll tax update that's going to be out there. And I'll show you where those are in a second, those payroll tax updates. And then you're going to run your payroll status check utility to make sure that everything's okay. And I'll show you that as well when we get there. Here's a more definitive order of events for you. So if you're like, what do I do first? So you do your time entry in the old year, process, print, post. Then you're installing that year-end release, or what's called the IRD, when it comes out. And of course, your consultant can help you with that. You'll generate year-end forms, make your backup, download and update your taxes. And then in the new year, you just start processing your time entries like you normally would, or your payroll entries like you normally would. All right, so this is that community hub for that year-end center, and I'm going to show you that real quick. Sorry for that, but here's our year-end center right here. You can find tons of information in here. So in this year-end center, you can go through all these FAQs. In the payroll area, I think is where I found some of those checklists and things like that. How do you reconcile your forms? How do you find the period and processing checklists? All of those things. You can, on the left here, navigate to year-end checklists, tax forms, etc. Just going to go back to that main page. You can go to reports and tax forms. What forms do I use? This will take you to that check site as well, so that you have kind of a link to that, and then how to reconcile all of that information. So there's a lot of information on that one year-end center. And you can always follow these announcements, news and alerts. That will kind of give you, when they finally finalize the big, beautiful bill thing, that will give you the information there as well. So that one's a good site to go to. So I'm going to show you some things in Sage now, and we're going to process accounts payable, 1099s, and W-2s. So the first thing we'll look at is in library master main and company maintenance. Remember, we talked about there's some information in company maintenance that flows through to your W-2s. And where this is the area that flows through to your 1099s or W-2s. So you would want to put in your contact information. I'm not using this company, so let me just go to a different company. We're going to use ABX. So I would put in my contact information in here, and my telephone number, and then my email address. And this stuff will flow through in case the government needs to contact you regarding your 1099s or W-2s. And then, of course, your federal ID and your state ID number. And then your trade name would be a name of the company if it's different from your company name up above. So you don't have to have that filled out. And then in accounts payable, when we go to accounts payable options, we want to make sure that on the main tab, our default calendar year is set to 2025 if we're processing our 2025 1099s. And this is where you would turn on 1099 reporting if you did not have it turned on previously. And so I'm going to show you in vendor maintenance. So if I go to the main tab and I go to vendor maintenance, this is where when I reconcile my 1099 information, I can change it if need be. So you do have to have security access. It is a security option in Sage 100. However, down here on the 1099 history, so this form is non-employee compensation. So if I go to 1099 history and look at the non-employee compensation, if I said, oh, this was inaccurate, it was actually 2,300. If I have the security rights to do so, I can change it there. So sometimes there is a way, when you probably know, but when you're processing invoices and it's a 1099 vendor, there is a checkbox in invoice data entry to not make this, or to, it's not a checkbox anymore. I think you just change the form to none. So it'll show you that it's going to go on to a 1099 form. So there is the chance that somebody could hit none by mistake and not put it into the 1099 box. So that's why you may have discrepancies and you may have to fix them. Okay, so now we're going to start running our accounts payable 1099s for the year. So, you know, usually this happens, you know, January or something when everything's done and ready to go. The 1099 processing is under accounts payable reports, form 1099 tax reporting. And you'll notice when you first go in here that you have to choose the form. So you may not have dividends or interest. So if you choose one of those, and you don't have any data in there, it will tell you so. We have data in miscellaneous and non-employee compensation. I'm going to choose the non-employee compensation and run through that. The miscellaneous interest or dividend would be the same. You would just choose that form and run through it. So you're going to do those 1099s separately by form. So I'm going to choose my non-employee compensation. Over here on the right, this is where you can put your minimum year-to-date payment. I'm not sure what it is this year. You'll have to check, but I'm going to say 50. I'm actually going to say 150. I meant to say. So you can put that minimum in there so that a 1099 is not generated if a 1099 vendor is below that amount. So I'm going to say accept here. Now this, when I say accept there, that's where you would be prompted if there was a tax update or tax form update comes from Atrix. So if there was a tax form update, you would be prompted there because now we're going into Atrix. So right now it's running that little check and it's going to go into our Atrix area where our forms are. All right. So it's going to ask you if you want to, I printed 1099s before, so this is a good note. I printed them to test today to make sure that everything functioned properly for the webinar. So if you've already printed them, when you go in, it's going to come to this screen. I'm going to say start over, but this is where you could correct completed 1099s. So let's say you went through after you printed them and you're like, oh no, something's incorrect. You could correct them. This is also where you can do a password lookup. So you have online access if you e-file with Atrix, and you'll see that in a minute. So this is where you can do a password lookup if you've forgotten your password. So I know that a lot of people only do this once a year. And so there is a good, chance maybe you don't have the password. So that's where that would happen. So I'm just going to say start over. And if you had not processed 1099s before, the first screen would be the next screen. So we're going to federal and state tax reporting, and basically it's opening this Atrix program now. So we notice you have not processed any 1099s for the current filing year. Before you begin filing, what do you want to do? Do you want to do a dry run or a test drive of those? So you can test drive 25 of your recipients or all of your recipients, or you can say, no, thanks, I'm just going to process them. So if you want to do a test run, choose one of the other two. The only difference is it doesn't offer you any of the e-filing or any way to do any kind of filing through the process. I'm going to do the actual process. So I'm going to say no thanks, start processing my 1099s so that I can show you all the e-filing options and all of that. So we're going to say next. Our taxpayer ID comes in from our company maintenance. Say next again, please read carefully. Are you using multiple company data files for this company? So if you are and this normally does not happen, but if you have multiple Sage companies and it's one tax ID number and you're combining them all together, there is a way to do that. You would say yes here, and then it would prompt you to bring in the companies. So I'm going to say no, I'm using a single data file for this company. You'll notice here that my contact information came through. So if I didn't have that here, it would make me fill that out. You do have to have contact information in there. I'm going to say next. And then you'd answer this question. I'm filing for my company employer, or I'm a tax preparer. Probably most of you are filing for your company. And then which type of filer are you? So if you use a transfer agent or not, you would know that. We do not. So we're going to say next. And then if we need to do any state tax items, so if you had any states that you needed to add into here, you can do that. Now, if you don't, I'm not going to here, but you'll see that it'll still prompt me for that tax information for the states that are applicable for 1099s. So I'm going to say next. There's no special state or local tax items. Otherwise, I would add those there. And then it says, do you have any recipients who elected to only receive 1099 forms electronically? So you can answer that yes or no, whichever the case. How do you want Social Security numbers to appear on your 1099s? So do you want no truncation? I usually truncate with this one, but you can choose whichever you would like. And if you want to print RIN numbers or recipient numbers on them, you can either leave it blank or print them. The government allows either. So I'm going to say next. So basically right now, when you see that running like that, Sage is coordinating with Atrix. So it's connecting to the Atrix program, and then it brings this in. So now it's saying, okay, this is what we want to happen. You need to review and edit the information. You need to print a copy, and you need to do your report submission. So we're going to say, okay. Now this is our 1099 screen, and you'll notice there's a lot of data at the top here, and I can scroll back and forth and see all that data. And then I can, look at any data over on the right-hand side as well. It's going to walk you through verifying your data. So it's going to say first, verify your recipient tax identification numbers, and you'll see those are highlighted in blue. And what it'll do is it's going to go through this process of highlighting everything in blue for you to check. So I'm like, okay, those look good. So I'm going to say next. And then it says verify if it's a FEIN or a TIN. So a business would be FEIN and a person would be a TIN. So that's why, so those look appropriate to me. So I'm going to say next. Now, if anything was missing that should not be missing, it's going to tell us, and it's going to highlight it in red, and we're going to have to fix it. The only thing I'd like you to keep in mind about that is if you fix anything in this screen, it won't fix in Sage 100. So you'll want to go back after and fix it in Sage 100 so that the next time you run them, that they're accurate. So like if you changed a name or something. So now it's saying verify the recipient's names. Those look good to me. So obviously you don't have to have a first name and last name. If it's not an individual, you just have to have a business name. And then I'm going to say next. And it's telling me invalid characters are detected in the name. So it wants us to fix them. So I'm going to say okay. And I know that the government doesn't allow any punctuation in the name. So see how it has an apostrophe in Paul's? So I'm just going to remove that. And I can remove that in Sage if I want. That would be one I would maybe not remove in Sage because I want it to look normal when I process checks and things like that. So maybe I would just remove it here. It's your choice. So I'm going to say next. And now it's going to come up and you'll see how things are highlighted in red. So it's basically saying that a zip code's incorrect, and you'll see it's in the incorrect format. And also the IRS on address line 2 doesn't allow any special characters other than those listed here. So I'm going to say go back and correct. You can also print the list. You'd probably want to save a detailed list, which will actually show you what is wrong. The print list just shows you how many records were incorrect. So you'd want to do the detailed one. And then I'm going to say go back and correct. So I'm just going to correct this. I'll be like, oh, somebody entered a 7 in here when there shouldn't be a 7. So I will probably go back to Sage after, make a note of that, and go back to Sage after to fix that so that going forward, that's correct. And then in here, I would just take out the number. And then that should allow that to turn green. And then I'm going to say next. And it'll tell us what it wants us to verify next. So verify all the income boxes. So this is where you have your report in front of you. You look, remember we changed that 1 to 2,300. So it picked that up. And then we look and make sure that everything's accurate as far as amounts. I'm going to say next. It'll say verify the filing state is correct. These all happen to be California. Good. Looks good. We'll say next, verify amount of state income and withheld. So we don't have anything withheld. We did not, withhold any taxes, which is pretty typical with 1099s. So that's blank and that's fine. And I'm going to say next. So it's saying recheck before you submit it. Agree that you have double checked the values that we're passing to the 1099s. I'm not going to do any e-filing, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to say agree. So then it's going to take you into a dialog to actually print your 1099s. So I'm going to say next. And this is where you can have Atrix e-file everything for you. So you'll see here at the top with a complete 1099 e-filing service, I have 3 vendors. It would cost me $29.99. That's their minimum cost, because you'll see it didn't really cost that much to print and mail the recipient copies or do the 1099 recipient copies. So it didn't get to $29.99, but that's the minimum. So that'll be what will happen there. Now you can just print them. So if you're doing a run through or whatever, you can just print them. I'm going to show you that. So if you choose not to do the complete, where they send out your 1099s and you're going to send out your 1099s, you can choose other options down here and choose what you want. So I can print my recipient copies and I can e-file my federal and state forms, which I know the federal government and most states like the e-file or encourage you to e-file now, and some even require it. So you would probably have to choose those options. And then when you choose this, it'll automatically highlight these two. And then do I want to print all of that stuff for my records? And I'm going to say yes. Now I'm not going to leave these 2 checkbox checked because I'm not going to pay for anything right now. So I'm going to take them off and we're just going to print them, but you would leave them on if you wanted them e-filed. So it's telling me that, organizations, the IRS is requiring e-filing. So, we're just not doing it right now. So you'll see my total at the bottom is 0. So you can always do it for free. Obviously, it's cheaper if you choose the other options and have them just e-file the federal and state forms. It's not really that costly anyway. You'll see it's like $1 something per recipient. Anyway, so depending on how many recipients you have, you can make that choice. And I'm going to say next. And then because I didn't choose the e-filing or the complete service, it wants to try to sell it to me, of course. So it's going to keep asking me if I want to do that. And I'm going to say next. So what state are we wishing to file? So if you're filing all your states, we just have California. So I'm going to say next. And you'll see here, it's going to tell us based on our selections what we're going to be running. So we're going to print our federal 1099 NEC. We're going to print our 1096. We're going to print our California forms. We're going to print our recipient forms. And then we're going to print our payer forms. So I'm going to say next. And now it's going to go to the forms here. So it's communicating back with Atrix again, and it's going to pull up these forms for us to review and print. So up at the top, it'll tell you what this is. This is the federal 1099 NEC. So this is what you would be submitting if you were e-filing the federal stuff. You would be e-filing these documents. And then we'll say next. I'm not going to print it right now, but you can print it. And if you do a test drive, you can print everything as well. You'll get to this same area and you can print everything. So I'm going to say no to printing now. And then we're going to go to the next one. And this is your federal 1096. So you can review that, make sure everything looks okay. We're going to say next step. Would you like to print the federal 1096 now? I'm going to say no. Here's our California 1099 NEC that we have to submit to California. So you'll notice there's our 3 vendors are all on one page for us to submit to California. It wants me to try to print it, and it wants that blank perforated paper. So you'll see how it tells you what you should print on if it's something different than a regular standard sheet of paper. So I'm not going to print that right now. And then we're going to go to our recipient 1099s. So you'll see up at the top, because we have 3 recipients, there's 3 pages up here, and I can scroll through them using these arrows. So this These are the 3 different businesses we're 1099ing. So we would mail these to the recipients. There's also a back side of this that we'll see at the end that the government wants you to print on the back side of this form. So I'm not going to print it right now. Obviously, if you e-file the forms, if you have Atrix send them to your recipients, they'll print them obviously for you on the back side and all of that. So this is the payer 1099. So this is our copy. We're going to say next. Here's our California 1096 that we have to submit to California. I'm not going to print it. So it will, Atrix will have you e-sign it if you actually have them process it. There was a place for the signature for me, but if you go through the e-filing, it'll have you e-sign it. So here's the, what's the instructions that's supposed to be printed on the back of the 1099 so that you could print them on the back of your forms if you printed them yourself. And that is it. So we went through, we printed all those forms. If we needed to do it again, we can come back, obviously, and do it. This is because I have history here. So this comes up at the end too. When you finish 1099s, we saw this screen in the beginning because I already had his history in there. You can view a detailed list of actions. You can view instructions on returning later. Like I said, you could correct them. You could start over. You can reprint them. So all of that you can do. And I'm just going to close it. So after this, you're going to get a prompt for accounts payable. Do you want to increment that 1099 calendar year in the accounts payable options window to the next calendar year? So if you're done for the year and the next time you do 1099s is going to be 2026, you would say yes, and it would change that in accounts payable options where we looked earlier to 2026. So that's basically it from the accounts payable side. The payroll side, slightly different, right? You would still run your reports to verify all of your data or to look at while you're running through that Atrix wizard to verify your data. The W-2 printing is under period end in payroll. So you would choose federal and state tax reporting. And you may, oh, sorry, I have to change to a different company here because I only have payroll in one company. So we're going to go back there, payroll, period end, federal and state tax reporting. So interestingly, it's telling me a payroll tax update is available for download. So when there is one available to download, it'll ask you to download it basically for whatever task you do. If you go into employee maintenance, if you go into payroll data entry, it's going to prompt you to download and update those taxes. So I'm going to say no here, and we'll go back to this in a second. But you can also go down to the utilities and go to payroll tax update. And you guys are probably familiar with this, and get to the payroll tax update there. And that just takes a few seconds to run, of course. I don't think it's going to open while I have the other thing open. And then you can always view your payroll tax update report to see what was updated when you apply a tax update. And then your payroll status check is where you check to make sure that everything's set up properly after you apply an update. Oh, it did say click to proceed and download the update. So I could say proceed and do that there. And it's going to download that update. So I'm going to move on with my federal and state tax reporting as long as it lets me. So when you go in here, it's going to be on federal. You can also change it to state, or existing would be things that you have already ran. So I'm going to say federal, and I'm going to choose my form. So you'll notice here I only have 2024 forms, and that's because the final 2025 forms are not out yet from the government. So Atrix will prompt you to update those probably towards the end of the year. You know, when you go in to do your 1099s, they should be done by the beginning of January. So when you go to do your 1099s, it'll prompt you for that update, and you want to make sure to do that. And then it will change these forms to the 2025 forms. There is one 2025 form in there. Interesting. They must have had that one already. So these are all the forms that you can print in here. And we're going to do the W-2s today. So I'm going to select that. And you would know if you needed the American Samoa, Guam, or Virgin Islands, but we're going to do the regular ones today. Here's our calendar year. We do these annually. Obviously, W-2s are annual. If you were a specific kind of employer, tax exempt, state and local government, state and local tax exempt, you'd have to choose that there. You'll see that all the information comes in here from my federal tax ID, and everything comes in from company maintenance. And then we're going to say proceed. Our update's still running in the background. Oh, it wants me to exit those tasks. Oh, there we go. It's working on it. Give that a second. So whenever you see this kind of status thing, it's actually interacting with Atrix. So you see this looks familiar. So I ran W-2s earlier to make sure that everything was okay for the demonstration today. So I'm going to say start over here, but the same options that you see when you're running your 1099s. So when you do it for the first time, you would not see this screen. If you have distributed copies of them and you say yes, it's not going to let you start over. You'd have to modify them. Or so if I say yes here, it's going to say, since one or more reports have been distributed, starting over is not available. So I'm going to say no to that. Oh, that payroll tax update is waiting for me, so I'm not worried about that. We'll let that just roll. All right, so here's our W-2 setup wizard. Same thing. It's probably looking real familiar to the 1099s, right? So do you want to test drive or do you want to process them? We're going to process them so that we can see them. Here's our company FEIN. That's from company maintenance in our setup on that second tab that I showed you. Next, please read carefully. Do you do multiple data files or just one? I do just one, so I'm saying no. This information is coming in from company maintenance. This is everything that I put in company maintenance for this particular company. If not, it will make you put in the contact information, just so you know. So I like to have it all in there so I don't have to add anything additional. I'm filing for my company and employer. We saw this for the 1099 stuff. Now, this is a little bit different. We didn't see this on the 1099 side, but with payroll, if you're doing payroll in multiple states, now this particular company, demo company, is doing payroll across the country in several different states. So it's going to show you, these are my state withholding numbers. And there'll be state unemployment tax numbers as well. Those numbers are entered into setup company tax group setup. Oh, our updates in process, but you'll see that when you go into setup company tax group setup, there's a place to put your state withholding number and your unemployment withholding number. If it's different or the same, you could put the same. So here's my tax account number. I'm going to say next. Here's my number for this state, Delaware. So basically you're just verifying the information. This is my number for Maine. Oh, this one's incorrect. So you'll see I didn't put the right information in. So then I would have to put the right information in here, and I would make a note. I'm just making this number up, of course. I would make a note to put that into company tax group setup. So I'm going to say next. Here's my Michigan. Here's my Mississippi. Oh, New Jersey's incorrect as well. So now you'll see that it brought in my New Jersey number, but it's missing the suffix. So we're going to put that in. And there's my New Jersey. So I had the suffix for the state unemployment. You'll notice that this one was the state withholding and this one's the state unemployment. Oh, and also note that when there's slashes like this, you don't have to put the slashes in the number. You can just put the numbers straight and Atrix will put the slash in there when it pulls it from Sage. So here's New York. Here's Pennsylvania. And now our state taxes are all good. So we have our account numbers because obviously we have to print those on the forms that we're going to be submitting to the states. So I'm going to say next. Our tax update is done. That's all. So I'm going to say next. And then this one, there's a special something in Colorado. And so it's asking me for that state. What tax type am I doing? So if you have anything like that, it'll pop up and show you. So now it's just going to say the states are all good. And then we're going to say next. Now this one is in Pennsylvania. So if you're in Pennsylvania, you may see this. There's a specific type of tax and it has a separate account number. So, and it's for Monroe. So I'm going to just put in the account number here and then that. And obviously you would have those numbers to process. All right, so now we get to the data verification. Do you have employees who are exempt from part of Medicare or Social Security? So you would choose yes or no there. And then do you have employees who are a member of the clergy? Do you want to use control numbers on your W-2s? You can choose yes or no if you want or not to. And then do you have any employees who elected to receive W-2 forms electronically? Yes, because you can mark that in employee maintenance. So I'm going to say next. If you're using control numbers, you would put something up here. The only field here that you have to fill out is what kind of payer you are. So if you're a 941 payer, you would choose that. Next, do I want to truncate my Social Security numbers and how? And then we're going to walk through the same thing that we did. This is a lot more pages because I have state filing and all of that, but we're going to walk through the same thing. And it's going out, it's communicating with Atrix, it's doing all that stuff. Okay, here we are. I'm going to say, okay, got a lot of employees here. So verify employee information. Now, you'll notice that there's a Social Security number missing there. So it will tell us eventually that Social Security number is missing and make us fix it, but you could just click on it and fix it now. I'm not going to. I just wanted you to see how it'll correct you. So I'm going to say next. And here it'll say, nope, can't do it. You can't go further. We have errors. So I'm going to go back and correct. Now, just remember, when you put a number in there, this is not going to populate back to Sage 100. So you'd have to go back into the employee maintenance and put that Social Security number in there. Or, you know, in this case, you might have to call the employee because you don't have it, something along those lines. So I'm going to say next. And it says verify additional employee information. So do they want the electronic W-2 that's coming from employee maintenance? You know, if we're electronically delivering, do we have an email address? All of these, retirement plan, third-party sick pay, et cetera, would be set up in their payroll, in their employee maintenance. So we're going to say next. Verify additional employee information. So it always highlights what it wants you to look at. So this is looking at our wages, withholding, all of that. We're going to say next. This is going to say these are the boxes for the state information. So verify the state information. And we have a bunch of states, so they're listed across the top here. So we would just verify all that information. There's little sliders down here if you have to move over. You know, if there's a lot of information, you can move over to verify that information. And then I'm going to say next. And it's going to say potential issues have been discovered. So you have to review these and see if these are applicable to you. Any individual that receives income with a resident of a taxing school district is subject to school district income tax. So I'm just going to say continue without correcting. This is for Ohio, you'll see it down here. So if you needed to, and you'll see it up here, they highlighted it in yellow. If you needed to correct that, you could. You could say go back and correct the information. Or you can just continue on without correcting if it's not applicable to you. Verify any unassigned columns. So basically it's saying look at everything out here. So it didn't highlight anything you'll see, but you can look at anything out here and make sure that everything's okay. And then I'm going to say next. And it's going to give me that important notice for me to agree to again, that I've verified my information. And then here's another little potential problem. So we saw this one, the taxing school district one, there's one warning, and there's 11 warning found in box 14, duplicate column titles exist. That's just because this is demo data, but they're going to be merged into one line on the W-2s. So that's fine. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So if you had to correct it, you could go back and correct them. If not, you can just continue without correcting. And here we go, just like we did before with the 1099s. It's going to ask us if we want to do the complete. I'm going to choose other options. You certainly can do the complete. There's the prices right there. I'm just going to print everything. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, and I'm not going to e-file anything because we're for demo purposes. So we're going to say next. It's going to say, hey, are you sure you don't want to e-file? I'm going to say next. we've exceeded the maximum limit for paper filing. So certain states have limits for paper filing, and we've obviously gone past those in those 3. So I'm just going to continue anyway. It tells you not, you should not, but I'm going to continue anyway. And then what states do you wish to file? I'm going to take a bunch of these off for the sake of time because you only need to see a couple to know what it does. But you would do them for all of your states. So I'm going to click next, and it's going to tell us what it's going to do. So it's going to print the federal 941s. It's going to print our Colorado stuff, Delaware, Indiana. It's going to print our employee W-2s and then our employer copies. So I'm going to say next. And now we're going to see the forms like we did in our 1099 printing. And here we go. We're going to be doing the same thing. This is Colorado. Verify it. So these are the employees that work in Colorado. Let's say next step. I'm not going to print them now. This is Delaware. Here's our Delaware stuff. Next. We only have 1 employee in Delaware, it looks like. And here's Indiana. Here's what we have to file with Indiana. We have 2 employees there. Here's our employee W-2s. So you'll notice there's 26 pages because, of course, our employees are printed 4 up on a page. So each page will have a different employee. There's all our employees. So we would go through and review all that information, make sure it's accurate. Click next, and I'm not going to print them right now. Here's our employer W-2. So this is 4 employees up on a page because these are for our records. So this one's only 7 pages. You could review all of those. And then I'm going to say next. And it wants the paper, that you would print them on. I'm going to say no. And now here's report 6 of 10 is our 941, our federal W-2. So this is 13 pages because it's 2 up on a page. I'm going to say next. I'm not going to print those right now. Here's our 941 federal W-3. So we would verify that information from our reporting. Here comes our Colorado 1093 report. Now you'll notice if there's something that you have to fill out on the report, it'll tell you that you have to fill it out. So for some of these forms, it'll ask you, so here's our total Colorado income taxes, and it says how much of the income taxes did you remit? By the end of the year, you should have remitted, have already remitted them all. So I'm going to put that we've remitted them all, and then you don't have an additional balance that you need to pay. And I'm going to say next. And agree. So it's talking about whether you print or e-file. And here's Colorado. I'm going to say no to print it. And here comes Delaware. So if you had more states, obviously, it'd take you a little longer to go through this. And I'm going to say agree, that I agree it's accurate. And do I want to print it? I'm going to say no. And finally, our last report is that W-2 notice that gets printed on the back of your employee W-2s. So if you're printing them and mailing them, you would have to print this on the back side of your W-2s, which, involves figuring out your printer. So I would like to have them send them to my recipients, but, it depends on how many employees and all of that you have and cost. So I'm just going to close this. And I'm just going to say yes to cancel them. And I'm just going back and I'm just going to back out of this. All right. So Courtney, I think we're ready for some questions if you are. I can't hear you, Courtney, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It helps when I don't get remuted. Okay, so thank you for all of you that watched me talk for a moment there. So We did get some good questions already. So if you have a question, now is the time to get it in. You can put those questions in the chat, put them in the Q&A, and we'll dive in just a moment. But before we go into the Q&A, I have a quick message from Noah Corwick on our MCS team. We have a special right now. I'm sure a lot of you use Microsoft 365, Microsoft products, Word, Excel in your day-to-day. So if you have M365, we do have a complimentary health check that we're offering throughout the end of the year. So I'm going to bring Noah on for a second just to tell you about that offer. So we're going to switch stages here.
Hey guys, we are doing Microsoft assessments to end out the year. What does a Microsoft licensing health checker assessment look like? It's making sure you're using your licensing in the correct fashion, saving you money, trimming the fat, or using a business standard license when you should be using a business pro license. Are you using 365 in the most optimal way possible? And again, that I mentioned, hopefully saving you money and giving you support. So contact us now if you want to learn even more and dive into a Microsoft health check or assessment.
Okay, so that's just a quick FYI. So if you do use Microsoft 365 products, the prices are rising once again this year. And there's always, my MCS team has told me that every time they do one of these health checks for one of our customers, that they find something that they didn't need or is not being utilized, and they're able, like 90% of the time to find some savings there. So great complimentary offer we just want to make you aware of. And then now we're going to go ahead and dive into some Q&A. And I think we're going to stay on stage here so that we can answer those questions live. So the first question I had come in earlier, Monica, was, if I can get my screen to clear here. We had someone ask, what is necessary to produce year-end forms 1094C, 1095C for all employees? This was earlier on, so we may have gone over it.
Gotcha. No, we really didn't. It's a different form option. So when you're in payroll and you go to your federal and state tax reporting, you're going to have an option for those 1094 or 1095Cs. And also, if you wanted the forms, if you're looking to get those forms, you would go to the Checks and Forms Center. And I'm going to pull that over onto my screen here. You would go to that Checks and Forms Center and you would be able to select Shop All Tax Forms and Business Forms. And then you can look through all those things that you needed, 1099s and 1096s, for example. So you would find the forms in there that you need to produce those. Okay.
This mute is going to get me. Okay, great, Monica. We are going to go into the next question. So another attendee asked, has the carry forward of the balances in i.e. 401k loans been fixed so that it carries forward to next year correctly?
Yes. So Sage says they have fixed that. So I have no proof of that yet, but so I would verify that. But they did say that they fixed that. I saw the article recently.
Okay, great to know. We had a question, will we be sending out the recording of this webinar? Yes, we will. The recording will be in your inbox the same way you received, all announcements about this webinar tomorrow afternoon. So just keep an eye out. It'll be coming your way tomorrow afternoon, and then you can review it at any time, over the next couple months. And then I just want to make everyone aware, we did launch a quick poll. So if, your question is that you need help getting something changed in your Sage 100 before year end, you need an update, you have other questions related to your Sage 100, you want to take advantage of that free M365 health check that our MCS team is offering, you can let us know in that poll and we'll make sure to get you in contact with the right person. So just in the poll section on the right-hand side of your screen. Monica, another question we have is this person said, so for those that have done the 1099 process appears to be nothing new. Can you just confirm if, they've done this in years past, there's nothing?
Correct. Nothing new.
Out of the norm. Okay, great. Another attendee asked, can we use box 14 for OBBA OT reporting correct for 2025 until it is coded in 2026 in box 12?
Yes, you can. I have seen guidance from the government that that's acceptable for 2025.
Okay, great to know. So I think I haven't missed any questions. I don't think so. We still have a couple minutes here, so I'm going to leave it open. If you still have a question, we'll hold on for just a second. And then if not, we're going to go ahead and wrap on Q&A. I feel like every time I say that, Monica, we get questions coming in. So we're going to give it just a few seconds. But I think a lot of you have been through this before. So like that one question asked, there's not anything brand new.
Mhm.
So with that, I think I'm going to take over here. And we're just going to say a quick thank you. So if something comes to mind, if you're watching this video back, if you're someone that missed the session today and you're checking out the recording, you can always reach us at info@swktech.com and we'll put you in contact with the right person. Or you can always reach out to your Sage 100 representative at SWK, the people you talk to day to day. So don't hesitate if any questions arrive. We'll be sending out more year-end resources, a recap of this webinar. If you prefer to read the blog version, then watch a video. We'll be sending that out to you later this month. And yep. Okay. I thought I might have a question there, but thank you all for attending. Thank you, Monica, for doing this annual session for us again. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we're here for any year-end help you might need.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.